So I'm very pleased to welcome today Karen Scarbrough, Senior Technology Associate at BP, who will be telling us about the art of the possible, real-world examples from the world of DeFi. Welcome, Karen.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here. So let me go ahead and get my presentation pulled up here. So as we already mentioned, it looks like I might need to be able to share my screen real quick if somebody on the other side can help me with that one. So presentation I'm going over is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. I started working and learning about Ethereum and public blockchain years ago. Was my first foray into the space. And now I work for a large company, and I am pleased to be able to work with them and do lots of things for them in the world of blockchain. And I'm kind of here more as an independent entity in support of Ethereum and what's possible. And I thought in the realm of having worked in enterprise for a while, watching the public blockchain space and seeing how much had been developed over the years, it was really important to bring the enterprise audience into what has been happening, not just now, because it's obviously very exciting with things in the news, but what's more exciting is what's happened over the years to enable this to happen, and all the amazing teams that have been so dedicated to building applications that are now starting to see the light in a lot of ways. So this presentation is intended to take us from 0 to 100 in a lot of ways. So if you're just coming to Ethereum and learning, this presentation is intended to take you through what is decentralized finance in the first place, and then why are we so excited about it? Especially being an enterprise, if you work for a type of innovation group or digital transformation group, we all hear a lot of different buzzwords that we get excited about over the course of our work. But what actually makes this one different and worth paying attention to? And then we'll go through an example of how a decentralized exchange works, as well as a decentralized lending example, and you'll hear more from expertise in that category throughout the presentation, and then some portions of what to look for next, and where the growth is going to come from, and what in the technology is also evolving. So to start off with, what is decentralized finance? So one thing to understand about it is it's not the codification of traditional existing financial systems. So taking what financial application now, just putting it on a blockchain really isn't what decentralized finance is all about. It, in essence, leverages public blockchains with smart contracts and incentivization models to manage financial applications in place of central entities. So there's a few key enablers that allow that to happen. First of all, being on a public blockchain, having participation be open and managed through incentivization and also disincentivization of what is appropriate for these applications. Smart contract design as well. So one component that isn't always intuitive to all audiences in this arena, depending on where you come from, is smart contracts actually being able to hold value. So when that happens, when a user sends tokens or coins to a smart contract, those tokens are debited from their wallet and they're actually held in the smart contract as value. Which we'll see as we go through why that's very important. And self-hosted wallets are also a big category that enables this design as well. So what I mean by self-hosted wallets is the ability of a user to interact with these decentralized finance applications directly from an account on the Ethereum blockchain that they wholly own the, in essence, username and password or private and public keys that they don't have to sign up through an application to necessarily create this wallet, but can take it from application to application and use it for different things. So in a sense, the user and one argument can be the connector of these applications rather than having a large backend model that needs to be interoperable with everything. So what makes this possible is that smart contracts govern these applications by the rules in the code. And we'll see what that looks like as we go through. So if you're new to DeFi, that's a real quick introduction to what's actually happening and what's allowing it to happen. So, all right, so why are we talking about decentralized finance in the first place? So in enterprise in particular, there's lots of amazing technologies that we see that don't necessarily translate into value immediately, but with DeFi, we've actually got a lot of examples of how this is increasing in value and usability. So let's go through user growth and then a metric that's called total locked value growth. We'll go through Ethereum transaction volume growth and then the transaction fees that these platforms are actually collecting, meaning that they're actually making money. So they're a good use case to pay attention to. So first of all, in terms of user growth, this is a great chart to look at as to the history of not only just DeFi, but Ethereum in general, because if you look all the way back to where this chart starts in January 2018, you can see that in the last ICO craze and token craze, this didn't exist. So this is something that has just formed over the past few years from teams who were just starting to launch their projects at the end of the last kind of market craze. And to their credit, they've stuck with an amazing persistence through product iteration, improved developer tooling, improved user tools. There's been an enormous amount of open source work and contribution. There's projects out there like Gitcoin that have funded grants that have enabled not just singular teams, but many multiple teams in the Ethereum ecosystem to build more and faster than they would have been building on their own. So from the growth, you can see January 2020, digging down into the numbers of this chart, there were less than 100,000 users in DeFi at that point just last year. And now I believe we may have already cracked 2 million users. But you can obviously see that more and more people are starting to use these. And it's significant, again, because it's from those self-hosted wallets. It's not necessarily from a centralized institution that everybody's signing up for the same app. People are actually using the Ethereum network directly with these applications. So the other component to pay attention to is what's called total locked value growth. So what this means is what's the total value locked in these applications that refers to the liquidity or collateral that's used in smart contracts from DeFi applications. Another point of significance in this is that this value comes from users of the platform. So it's not necessarily entirely large institutions coming in and putting this money up for these protocols, but actual users contributing. So this has continued to grow. And what this leads to is, okay, well, we see that there's a lot of value in this space, but how is the actual transaction volume? Is this money that's just sitting there and not being used? But you can see in this next chart here, it's really encouraging because we have had the largest Ethereum quarterly transaction volume settled in the past quarter. It has jumped up to a significant 1.5 trillion in transaction settlement on the Ethereum blockchain, which is incredible when you look at the history of what we've done in the past. And speaking to the team that put together this chart, probably what's even more significant from an enterprise side is that this chart is inclusive of Ether plus stablecoins. So stable coins being tokens that are tied to fiat value. And this 1.5 trillion in settlement, only 40% of that value was in ETH. So that means 60% of that 1.5 trillion was in stable coins, which is a lot. And if you look at the stable coin growth over the past, even just since the beginning of the year, the amount of stable tokens, every time I quote it to somebody, it's gone up. And you can look at projects like USDC and US dollar coin that started out at 3.5 billion at the beginning of the year, and now it's up over 13.4 billion. And we've just made it marginally past the first quarter. So it's really interesting to pay attention to how much value is moving onto the blockchain and then also being transacted on as well. So, but a big part of whether or not these things are going to be successful and how new business models are going to play out is, are there examples of teams actually making money from it? So you can see here the daily fees per different applications listed in pink here from decentralized finance, and you can see certainly the large popular ones are making money, and as employees of a business, that's what we're in charge of paying attention to and bringing the attention to for our customers. So although blockchain has been continuously searching for use case after use case over the past 3, 4, 5 years, now we've got some really strong examples of what has been successful in the public space. So moving on to how these examples have worked and been designed. This is a very generic overview of how a decentralized exchange works. So why it's different, and I mentioned in the beginning, is the liquidity being provided by users. How this would work in practice is a liquidity provider, let's call her Alice, sends equal amounts of USDC coin and Ether to the decentralized exchange for trading. And she does this on the premise that she will receive a portion of the transaction fees. This liquidity held in a smart contract, the rates can be maintained by ratios of the asset, which perhaps in the question and answer session, if you want to learn more about how those work as more of a math lesson, then we can go through that. I have some slides on that. Others use price feeds or different methods. The important part about understanding the automated market maker method with the bit that works on a ratio of an asset is now you've got price feeds in a lot of ways and managed in these smart contracts that aren't reaching out to other applications and exchanges in order to get that information. So that makes it incredibly powerful. We'll see at the end that all these components fit together to create an ecosystem. So if you can have one component that can give you a sort of price feed, then you can have other components leverage that for more use. So what happens from there is traders use the platform and the smart contracts to trade against their desired tokens from their cryptocurrency wallets as well. So you can see here that the liquidity is just managed in the smart contract. The user funds are not held by the exchange. They're held in those individual users' wallets themselves. So you've got an entire system running where the management of the value is entirely on the blockchain itself and then managed by the individual users, which makes it a lot different than some of the existing applications and designs out there. So another high-level overview is how decentralized lending works. And there's a team that's talking a little bit later, Aave, that I'm sure will go into much more depth of how they've built their lending platform. But in this high-level overview example, how this works is you'd have a collateral provider. It's call her Alice again, would provide a token like ETH or others to the platform. They could do this in order to take out a loan themselves or collect interest on the provision of loans with their funds. So the decentralized lending platform can have interest rates that are variable or fixed. Again, this is managed by information in the smart contract. So if there's another application that finds it valuable to understand the interest rates, those can be looked upon to build something else. So another important component to understand of this and why it's even more decentralized than just being on a blockchain is that the smart contracts and the entities that's building these lending platforms themselves, they're not banks. So defaulting loans are not going to be liquidated in the same manner. So if there's an instance where somebody's taken out a loan that's defaulting on payments, you have liquidators within the ecosystem that anybody can be realistically and come in and liquidate these loans they are additionally incentivized to do so based on additional rewards. So in this category, something that's really different than traditional finance is the loan collateral being held in smart contracts and liquidators incentivized to liquidate loans rather than banks or other traditional methods. So there is much more than that. There's platforms out there for decentralized insurance, derivatives, options, synthetic assets. And again, these platforms didn't spin up within the past few months. They've been working for years on iterating through these projects and building what's been successful today. So one thing I hinted towards earlier is that these platforms aren't existing as siloed. They're building on top of each other. So things like the decentralized insurance is being used to ensure new protocols from users based on the demand there. You've got these platforms leveraging different aspects that allow the value to compound much more significantly than if they were being built on their own. And there's fundamental ways in the way that blockchain works to be able to do that with Ethereum, because you have this composability through these native APIs is a good way to bridge the gap there and think about it from technologies that we understand and an enterprise today. So even though, like, hopefully you can see from this that there's so much happening in this arena, there's a lot more to pay attention to as well. And a lot of it's going to be covered in the rest of this talk. So scaling is important, and scaling doesn't just mean transactions per second. I think we can all attest to if you purely want to achieve transactions per second increases, there's other legacy technologies to help you do that. But if you want decentralized transactions per second, that looks a lot different. So that's the problem that many in Ethereum are trying to solve, not just increasing throughput, but maintaining the decentralization as that's achieved as well. Privacy is something to consider as well. Privacy with computational verification is important through technologies like zero-knowledge proofs and other cryptographic systems that are arising out there as well. The baseline protocol goes through a great use case of that because a lot of the privacy that is achieved in blockchain, it's going to also need to be provable. So what that means is that users and entities want to maintain privacy, but they want to also have the proof of transactions or computations that allow them to transact value or change the state of an application on a blockchain. So another important part is blockchain state growth. So as more and more people are using the platform, you're going to have more and more data that's recorded. And this means things like running a node, are going to grow in storage requirements and depth. And there's many projects out there working to address this and start to consider it for the future. Blockchain security is another important portion to watch. So miners that have been comfortable with transactions in the past, there's considerations around how does mining look at things like ordering transactions, and what does that look like in the future if you've got a trade that can be potentially manipulated one way or another. So that's something different than we've thought about in the past, because we've all certainly seen the smart contract challenges, but now we've got to consider more and more of the ecosystem as these things grow. Government regulations, but I actually say this in a good way, because it's not just a conversation around banning or not banning cryptocurrency. It's things like just yesterday, Wyoming allowing for the formation of an LLC through a decentralized autonomous organization, or a DAO, which is a way of managing an entity on a blockchain through a decentralized organization. So that's just as important as paying attention to the more controversial topics out there. And then I already mentioned stablecoin growth and how much that has accelerated this year, and user accessibility. So at the end of the day, still being a niche environment that crypto is, the better that it can achieve bringing more users to the ecosystem, the more successful it's going to be, whether that's something in decentralized finance or gaming or social networks or whatever other application. So I believe I'm achieving right on time here. So I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the presentations here today and gets excited about what's possible in the future. And thank you.